It's safe to say I've harped on the 24-inch iMac design a lot, okay? And I've beaten that white bezeled chinned horse to death. So in today's video, I'm not going to be talking much about how the design isn't for me, and I'm not a fan. I've been using it now for a while. The design has not really grown on me, particularly from the front, but there's still lots of nice things I have to say about it, and it's not just about accessories or just about performance. It ultimately does also come down to the design, and there's attributes of it I appreciate. So to win back some Apple Sheet points today, we're talking about things I love about the 24-inch iMac. Let's begin. For one, the Touch ID lock button. This is not something I saw that many people talk about initially. But yeah, Touch ID is awesome, being able to just rest your finger there and the device unlocks. But also, if you want to lock the iMac very quickly, you can simply press down the Touch ID button and it now requires Touch ID or the password to unlock again. So if you're in a work environment where you want the iMac to go to sleep, or you have some private files on there you don't want anybody to have access to, instead of either having to hold the power button or go to shut down or put it to sleep, you can just press one button and it basically locks it like that, which is pretty sweet and very easy to unlock once again when you are ready. So I love Touch ID on the Magic Keyboard, especially considering all the old Apple Magic Keyboards that Apple is still selling are still equipping an eject key, which is entirely useless because Apples have not had CD drives or DVD drives for a while, and that eject key does not even eject like SSDs or SD cards that are plugged in. You have to actually go into Finder and hit the eject button. So I have no clue why they're still shipping the eject key on Macs, but for sure this is way better than that. Also, on the subject of this keyboard, I love that they brought more curvature to it. In fact, in regards to the 24-inch iMac design, the curvature matches the corners of the 24-inch iMac perfectly, which is a nice little detail that could easily go unnoticed, and the old Magic keyboards are a lot more squared off and they don't match the curvature of the even older iMacs. So I'm happy that Apple updated the Magic Keyboard to look a bit more fluid and consistent throughout the ecosystem. On top of that, I love that they're color matched. So the blue iMac comes with the blue keyboard and the blue Magic Mouse, which doesn't really fix overall the problem most people had with the Magic Mouse too, but still, I like color matched accessories. You know, I appreciated it with the iMac Pro coming with space gray keyboard and trackpad and mouse, and I appreciate it with this iMac as well. I think that's nice. It's a very faded, like barely blue. In fact, in certain lighting, it doesn't even look blue to me, but across the other color options, I'm glad they did that. And the braided cables, I'm in love with. I love the fact that they include a USB-C to Lightning cable that's also color matched and braided. The power cable being braided is amazing. I wish they would do that with more accessories. I want more braided cables across things that are also color matched. I'm very, very surprised Apple did not want to ship those colored braided cables with the new iPhones, especially with all the new color options the iPhones come with. So I wish they would do that, and I'm glad to see them with the 24-inch iMac. But that's enough about the accessories. I'm not here just to gaga over colors and cables, but the actual iMac itself, I appreciate so many angles of this thing other than the front. You guys know how I feel about the white bezels and the chin. We've talked about that before, but seriously, like, the flat edge design looks amazing, and I love how well that blends in with the ecosystem now of the iPads having the flat edges, the iPhone having the flat edges. Now the iMac does too, and it looks absolutely amazing from behind to actually see a flat black with this very rich, very vibrant blue color, and I love the way it contrasts with the giant Apple logo on the back. I don't know if I've ever seen a bigger Apple logo on a product. It might be not quite as big as the Mac Pro Apple logo, but still, for a device as cheap as the 24-inch iMac, which does have really great value, it's kind of cool to see such a premium build with such a thin design on a stand, and I love the way it looks from the side. And if you are the type of person to want to buy an all-in-one because of how it looks from behind or the side, because this is going to be sitting at a reception desk or it's going to be sitting somewhere in the room where you're going to see the back a lot, I totally admire it as well. In fact, I am very tempted to just swivel this thing around and only look at the back because of how gorgeous the design is, and I imagine it being kind of the perfect all-in-one design for Apple to revive and bring back into their Apple stores, because people walking by the Apple stores in malls and stuff are just going gonna see the back of this iMac and see these rich, really colorful aluminum enclosures that are very minimal and very flat from the back. And while the back and side angles are not the most crucial ones, because most people are probably going to have this back up against a wall and they're going to be using it from the front, I still do think incorporating all angles of the design, the 24-inch iMac is very gorgeous from several angles, just not the one it matters most. And as you guys know, I'm a huge fan of USB-C, and while I was a bit annoyed with the only 2 Thunderbolt ports and I would love to have had more, I still must admit it's very clean and very minimal looking to only have USB-C on the back of an all-in-one iMac, especially one that's so thin and also so flat on the edges. Now just having 4 USB-C ports on the back, it looks so nice. I like not having this cluttered mess of ports. You know, the functionality of having a bunch of ports is lovely, but if we're talking pure aesthetics, I do think it looks really cool to just have very little ports out the back, and the fact that they let you do Ethernet through the power cable now allows those people who do care about having a very clean, minimal desk setup, having the most clean, minimal desk setup possible. So that's just another side effect of this ultra thin design, which I genuinely think is cool. And pay very, very close attention to my next point, because as you guys know, I've harped on the bezels quite a bit, but this is the one nice thing I will say about the bezels, all right? There's not a lot of these, so hold on to this one, but having the 24-inch iMac right next to my iMac Pro on my desk for the past few days, it's been almost a week now, I can confidently say that the bezels wrapping around the display are about half as thin as the bezels on my iMac Pro, so probably a little bit less. I'm distracted by the color because it's not the type of bezel I like having on any type of display, but the thinness of them should be appreciated because they are less than half the thickness of the last generation 21.5-inch iMac. So that type of bezel shrinking is appreciated, and I hope Apple continues to shrink bezels like that. I just also happen to hope they make them the right color. And when we talk about functionality, I mean, yes, of course, this still is rocking the M1 chip. We know how fast the M1 chip is. It's not terribly different across different devices. I know that there's all kinds of speed tests and Geekbench scores that we can compare to across multiple different products, but in real-world applications, M1 is pretty close across the board. If you guys are curious if I noticed a performance difference between the M1 and the MacBook Air I reviewed last year versus the M1 here, not really. I did a 10-minute 4K at 60 video export test with the iMac Pro versus the 24-inch iMac. I've seen different results online, but I don't see that many people doing time lapses of the exports, so that's why I document mine. I don't just give you a bar with a number, but I was expecting the 2 fans to really help out with this 24-inch iMac and make it perform perhaps quite a bit better than the M1 MacBook Air, which had no fans at all. And the truth is, it didn't really make that big a difference. The iMac Pro still came out ahead, and with a 10-minute video file, exact same clip on both, exact same export settings, started them just about at the same time. I gave the 24-inch iMac a little bit of a lead. It still took about 7 minutes longer to export that same video file with the 24-inch iMac. And if you guys recall, in my past export test with the M1 MacBook Air, it was a 5-minute video, but the MacBook Air took about 2.5 minutes longer. So 10-minute video on this machine took about 7 minutes longer. So I don't really exactly know how the fans are supposed to help, but what goes without saying is the fact that this machine cost $1,500 and the iMac Pro, when it was new, cost me about $5,000, $6,000. So the fact that you can now buy an all-in-one desktop that includes amazing speakers, by the way. I saw some people saying the speakers were a little lackluster. I think that for the job the 24-inch iMac is catering to, the speakers are plenty overkill. I think they get plenty loud, and sure, the iMac Pro speakers sound a bit better, but that was also substantially more expensive. I think the sound quality is superb, and also the webcam is incredible. Some people get kind of picky with contrast and dynamic range and that kind of thing, but I did an entire live stream with the webcam on the 24-inch iMac. It's still up on the Tailosive Tech Streams channel if you guys haven't checked that out yet, but I think the studio quality microphones combined with the M1 computational help of the 1080p webcam, this is an amazing all-in-one package if you're comfortable with this design on the front. I happen to not be comfortable with it, but if you are fine with it and you're not bugged out by the colors, the chin, or the white bezels or anything, then this is an astounding deal with the performance you get out of the M1 chip. Just the fact that you can export a 4K at 60 video in a reasonable amount of time. The fans barely were kicking on. I could barely hear them. And you can get all this for like $1,300 on the base model. And keep in mind, haven't seen that many people talking about it, you can go into checkout settings on that base model, which only comes with one fan. But in my opinion, for the type of person that's going to be buying a 24-inch iMac like this, the slight drawback in the 7-core GPU and the one fan thermal limitations, not going to make a big difference on day-to-day life. So yeah, the base model's fine. You can go into checkout and configure it to come with Touch ID and configure it to come with Ethernet on the power brick for an additional $80. So don't feel like you have to buy the $1,500 model if all you care about is Touch ID or all you care about is having Ethernet. Those are options that are pretty cheap even for the base model. And while the M1 for my workflow is not proven to be faster than the iMac Pro, I still think for the market that this is going after, it's going to be a plenty amount of room for overhead and great sounding speakers. Amazing panel, by the way. Very rich, very high pixel density, and I don't care for the border, but the resolution is wonderful. Even though it's not a mini LED, it still gets plenty bright, and I'm still very happy with the panel itself, and it's equipped with True Tone, which many people appreciate. So I hope people know that with all my criticisms I gave the 24-inch iMac and everything I don't like about it, I wasn't hoping that someone who did like the design would suddenly come around my way and start hating the design, because it's my loss. If a design does not work for you in any category, whether it's cars, phones, or computers, if there's a bunch of functional benefits and value benefits to having a particular design that you don't mind and you're comfortable with, that's to your advantage. If you're the type of person like me who can't get past the design and is not comfortable with it, and no matter how many times I look at it, I can't think it looks good, that's my loss. That means this value option here is no longer to my advantage, and I have a harder time appreciating a device that has so much potential. And I'm not trying to convince you guys to be like me, but I just know how I feel, I know how my opinion is, and I can tell it's not going to change. But I will say, even though I've complained a lot about how the lightness of an iMac doesn't matter, or how thin the iMac is doesn't matter because it's a desktop, the one use case where I'll admit having a very thin and light iMac, even though there's no battery and you don't really carry it around with you, being able to easily swivel this thing around when you want to access the ports on the back is actually pretty handy. You know, with the iMac Pro, it's pretty big and it's pretty heavy, so when I want to have to plug something into the back, I usually just get up, whereas the 24-inch iMac is so thin and so light that it's really, really easy to swivel to the back and access all the ports you need. And you can easily tell, all right, these are the Thunderbolt ports, these are the non-Thunderbolt ports, and I know exactly where to plug in. And that was not a use case I was envisioning when I was thinking thin, light iMac. I was just thinking, who cares? It's a desktop. But being able to easily swing it around and point it to different angles, if someone walks in the room, you want to position the iMac so that everybody can see it better. And I also think they did a great job with the dock. It's not height adjustable, but it doesn't look the same as all the iMac docks that we've had for like 15 or 20 years now. They gave it a new clean design, which I appreciate. It looks good. It goes with the flat edge aesthetic that the rest of the 24-inch iMac was going for. And the only thing I think I would change about the back design, aside from having more Thunderbolt ports, is that I don't really think you need the power button to be where it used to. When you're making a thin edge design like this, I really don't see the issue with just kind of embedding a nice little power button onto the side here. Kind of like if it's an iPad, or, you know, you're willing to put the headphone jack on the side of the Mac like this, just embed a little button. I'm not saying make it a button that protrudes, but kind of like the side button on the Apple Watch, which disappears from the front. You just put a little power button on the side. That would probably be easier to reach and wouldn't have to feel around for it as much as the power button on the back. But we're nitpicking here, and ultimately, especially from the angle I'm looking at it right now, it is a gorgeous machine and has a good amount of performance, great speakers, great webcam, great microphones. For the market it serves, I think it's going to do a very good job. I just have to wonder to myself, is the consumer all-in-one iMac market really that present these days, or wouldn't most average consumers rather save money, get a MacBook Air, get something that they can actually take with them anywhere they want and has a battery that has the same performance and is cheaper? And, well, okay, we don't need to go down that train again. Either way to say, in my opinion, the MacBook Air is still like the best technically all-in-one design. It's a lot easier to set up. You don't have to remember to plug in both power cables, and you can take it with you, and it still has an insane amount of performance. So for everyday people, I would still gravitate towards the M1 MacBook Air over this. But if you're the type of person that's like, I don't need a laptop, I don't want a laptop, I want a desktop, and I want it to be an all-in-one, then if you're comfortable with the chin and white bezels and that doesn't doesn't bother you, this is pretty great. So I'll give Apple credit where credit is due. I just hope that in the future, Apple wouldn't be so against having at least the option. You know, I wouldn't have minded the white bezels as much if there was just a space gray option at checkout. Like if you can opt for black bezels, I don't think many people would have minded that or complained. And hopefully in the future they can work on removing the chin, which I guess many people find iconic. I just don't think that that's a good reason to keep it. You know, I think the iPad Pro is amazing, and that doesn't have really many iconic features to it. It's just an iPad, but all good things come to those who wait. So this is your Help Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.